See, I grew up watching Gundam and Transformers, and they were both franchises that are very near and dear to my heart. As a child, giant robots and all things mechanical like cars, planes, all resonated with me and all piqued my interest. I was just very autistic about them. But it wasn't until I grew up that I realized how political they both are, Gundam and Transformers. And by extension, all series or franchises that involve giant robots. Mostly. See, Gundam has always been very political. I mean, considering that it was one of the very first anime series to be like, let's talk about the more mature stuff. See, anime, especially mecha anime, up to that point in the 70s, has been mostly kid-friendly toy advertisement. But see, Gundam and the people who made Gundam changed that. Not just for mecha anime, but for anime in general. Because, Godzilla and the gang existed for the same reason, but for the wider Japanese entertainment industry. I won't talk much about the Universal Century, aka the main timeline, aka the main Gundam series, because honestly, that one deserves its own analysis, or just its own thing. But let's take a look at the modern political commentary that Gundam has, right? First of all, let's look at series like Gundam Seed, a series that deals with genetic engineering, eugenics, racism on cocaine, and genocide. Keep in mind both Gundam Seed and Seed Destiny came out in 2003, 2005 respectively. But I did watch it when I was 6, 7 years old. 6, 7? Given the time period, Gundam Seed did make a reference and a critique of
the world's most dangerous regime of Israel.
So the premise is the Earth Alliance, the Gundam Seed version of the Earth Federation, who consists mostly of natural humans, going back to the whole eugenics and genetic engineering thing, are about to commit an act of genocide to the people living in the space colonies, who are all mostly genetically altered. And they were going to nuke the space colony by launching it from a bunch of spaceships. One of the ships is called the Netanyahu. They weren't being subtle about that one. And I know it's intentional because the other ships that were doing this heinous act that was explicitly named all have names of figures who are already long gone. There were ships named after Oda Nobunaga, the Roosevelt, and Beowulf. This is the only ship with the name Netanyahu. And trust me, I've tried looking for any other person that could have been named Netanyahu that had some sort of historical significance. I couldn't find it. It's probably the Netanyahu you're thinking about. And this is in 2005, by the way, at a time where most of the criticism of that individual came mostly from people in the Middle East, Muslims, and other countries and people who have aligned themselves with the Palestinian cause, which is, again, not a lot back in 2003-2005. I know this is not a lot and is kind of a small thing, but it's still noticeable considering the context of the series and the very obvious name that sticks out like a sore thumb. Another such case with Gundam's modern politics is in 2007. At the peak of Western media portraying brown people and Muslims in general as terrorists and psychopaths, such as at one time that Iron Man took the 10 Rings, a group or an organization in the comics that was distinctly Chinese, and made them into the Taliban somehow. Gundam did something different. For the newest entry at the time, Gundam 00, it was decided that the main character will be ethnically Kurdish. Because, the Middle East ain't just all Arabs. And his name is Soran Ibrahim, or his more well-known codename and the name that he used mostly in the series, Setsuna F. Seye. See, Gundam always had a diverse set of characters, just like this series, where alongside Setsuna, we have an Irishman that would have joined the IRA, a non-binary homunculus, and Moon Knight. But see, this one was on purpose. Because, see, the entire first half, or even 75% of the first season of Gundam 00, was about a conflict in the Middle East due to an energy crisis. The series showed how the Western Bloc and its surrounding neighbors that once had caused so much trouble and political instability and civil war and bombing of civilians, all because of oil, had now abandoned it after finding a much cleaner energy alternative, causing the region to be even more unstable. And the series itself gave a pretty nuanced illustration of how religion plays into all of this, by showing that religion itself had nothing to do with it, but instead was used as a tool by the people in power. That the entire conflict itself has always been about politics and money.
على عهدي على ديني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني على أرض تلاقيني أنا لأهلي أنا فديهم والله أنا دمي فلسطيني 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 أنا دمي فلسطيني.
But now let's take a look at the other franchise that's near and dear to my heart, that did not start out political. See, the original G1 cartoon was made to be an advertisement for a toy line, and much like other great piece of American media, it was made in Japan. See, Hasbro brought over the Japanese toy line Diaclone to sell to American kids, because, you know, kids loved cars and action figures. Combine them and you'll be making bank. But then they realized kids would not just grab a bunch of robots from the toy shelf that they cannot connect with. So then they made the show and Marvel made the comics. That's right, whatever franchise or series it is that you like, it has probably been touched by Marvel or Disney before. But you see, neither had any deep political messaging or mature themes. I mean, it was made for kids and it was mostly an ad. So the heroes and villains like Optimus and Megatron have your typical Saturday morning cartoon motivation and goals.
That Greek nigga! Give me a bundle!
It wouldn't be until the Dreamwave comics where we get the more deeper and political themes and where we get to explore each character's motivation and where they came from, what is it they strive for, and then eventually this is expanded even more with the IDW comics. And the stuff that happens in the IDW comics is what eventually will bleed through into the movies, the cartoons, and the video games. Because in the IDW comics, it gets incredibly political. Transformers' main political commentary is on class-based segregation and violence, and it also deals with identity politics, and we all see this primarily through Megatron's eyes, or optics, or sensors, whatever it is they decide to name it. The premise is Cybertronian society is incredibly unjust and segregated, and has a caste system. All because of this guy that looks like the result of a goon sesh between Optimus and the Wing Zero. When Nova Prime was in power, he introduced a system in which every Transformer, or Cybertronian, is separated by a caste system based on what they transform into. See, Transformers aren't really born like usual, they don't have parents. They all came from their planet sort of primordial soup, and they just come out complete, like a full-grown adult. Depends on the continuity. Sometimes they do have children, or they do have children forms. It depends on the continuity. Some could turn into planes, some could turn into cars, and others like tanks or construction vehicles, like heavy vehicles, right? If you could turn into a plane, congrats, you are the most privileged. You could literally be whatever you want. A politician, a war general, whatever you want, you could become it. If you turn to a car or a truck, you're like the middle class, you know? But Primus forbid, you transform into some sort of heavy vehicle, or like a construction vehicle, or like a tank, because then you're either gonna be a slave or a cannon fodder in the war. See, Megatron was unfortunately one of these Cybertronians that were born as a tank-looking vehicle and was made to work in the mines. Just like the movie, you know, Transformers 1. But because that was a more kid-friendly movie, it did not show the full abuse that Megatron and Cybertronians like him had to face, and it also kind of fast-forwarded his process of being radicalized and immediately becoming an extremist. Because in the comics, it was a much longer and detailed process of how someone could be radicalized and then eventually become an extremist. Cybertronians or Transformers like Megatron, they're not even valued by the society. They're not even viewed as a part of that society. Instead, they're viewed as like expendable tools and spare parts when they die. They're replaceable, and when they die, their parts will be used by the privileged class as upgrades or like replacements. Because, you know, Transformers also kind of age and they rust. Eventually, Megatron escaped slavery and became a gladiator. Not because he really wanted to, but because he had no choice. It's not like he could just go onto LinkedIn and find a new job, you know? Because the whole transform into a tank thing. But it's here where Megatron became more than just a gladiator. He became an activist, a philosopher, and a poet, preaching for a just and fair society where everyone has the freedom to choose what they want to do, and that they shouldn't be treated any differently because of what they transform into. And this is what eventually inspired Orion Pax. You know, Optimus Prime before he's Optimus Prime. But this is also where it's different from the movie, because in the movie, Optimus Prime worked in the mines with Megatron. But in the comics, Optimus came from a much more privileged background because of what he transformed into. He was a librarian or a clerk, I think. He had the connections, but he's also aware of the corruption and the injustice of the system. And that's why he empathizes, support, and eventually joined Megatron's movement. But this is also where they became brothers in arms. See, Megatron became like this Malcolm X type of figure to the Transformers because he knew how corrupt the system was and had a radical vision on how to change that. Unfortunately, the comparison stops there. The problem is most people like to compare characters like Professor X and Magneto, Optimus and Megatron to the likes of MLK and Malcolm X. See, this is just the wrong way to look at the relationship and their ideologies. See, Magneto and Megatron have something in common that they don't with Malcolm X, which is their lust for power and a tendency to be authoritarian dictators. See, Malcolm X was not like that. I mean, smarter, way more educated people than me will tell you the same thing.
Call that violence. I don't in any way encourage black people to go out and initiate acts of aggression indiscriminately against whites. But I do believe that the black man in the United States and any human being, anywhere, is well within his right to do whatever is necessary by any means necessary to protect his life and property, especially in a country where the federal government itself has proven that it is either unable or unwilling to protect the lives and property of those human beings. I'm a Muslim. I believe in the religion of Islam, which believes in brotherhood, complete brotherhood of all people. But at the same time that I believe in this brotherhood, I don't believe in forcing my desire for brotherhood upon those who aren't willing to accept it.
Because I think the
But to compare Malcolm X to Megatron or Magneto is not just disrespectful, but also misses the point of a character like Megatron. See, Megatron was corrupted by power, and depending on the continuity, just snapped mentally. He became the very same tyrant that he once fought against, even adopting some of their beliefs. How he segregates his men into those that are more powerful and those that are weak, and he values those who are way stronger than the rest. See, Optimus actually lived and continued the original vision that Megatron had. Optimus was kind and compassionate, but he's not soft. I mean, it's Optimus. He could throw hands. Have you seen him throw hands, bro? Optimus understood that violence is inevitable when it comes to like a revolution, but he doesn't glorify it. And in some media that includes this storyline, he even shows remorse for his violence and tries to find like the most peaceful option for change. It's just unfortunate that every time his opponent is a mentally unstable Megatron. And in a way, this better represents the ideals of Malcolm X with Optimus. Because it's not that violence is bad, but violence is sometimes necessary when it comes to having to face an opponent that constantly brutalizes you, constantly violates your rights, and constantly puts you through violent acts that you have to fight back at some point. But there's a limit, right? There's a limit where you stop. And with Optimus, he also has those limits. He doesn't target non-combatants. He doesn't brutalize his opponents. He doesn't do executions.
No, Optimus!
Unless, we don't talk about the Bayverse, because honestly the Bayverse one is just psychotic. Unlike Megatron, where, he just glory kills everyone that he sees. At least in my opinion and my interpretation is that that's what Malcolm X was talking about. It wasn't glorifying violence, but it's a necessary piece of the revolution, of change. Especially when your opponents, your oppressors themselves get ridiculously violent to you. Most of the time when it comes to political or anti-war media, the people that are going to watch it or consume it are already going to be people who are in the know, so to speak. But if you want to appeal and educate a much wider audience, you need a gimmick, You need a gimmick to grab their attention and to retain their attention. And hopefully they could absorb whatever it is the message that you're trying to put forth. Unfortunately, sometimes the gimmick outshines the message. Like what Yoshio Kitomino said, Gundam was a mistake. Not the series, but the Gundam or the mecha itself. And also like the merchandising of the Gundam or mecha. For example, the Gundam was meant to show you the brutality of war. It wasn't supposed to be, it was supposed to show you the horrors of war and how destructive this thing is. It was meant to show how destructive the ideals, the philosophy, and the agenda of an individual can be, especially when you put them in an 18-meter tall version of a human. But unfortunately, both with Gundam and Transformers, the gimmick became the center of attention. Every time there's a new Gundam series coming out or a new Transformers series coming out, the first thing people are wondering, which figure or model kit I'm going to buy. Are they going to be good or not? Which design looks the best? And I get that's the appeal of those series, but at the same time, it also has become the priority for the people watching. It's not about what it's trying to say, not even what could be the deeper meaning behind the series, but it's like the merchandising of it. It's the priority, right? The first priority is always the figures. Second priority might be the story. And then the third priority might be the political messaging. And that's the problem, is that the gimmick has taken priority over what the series is trying to tell you. So, the next time someone says that your favorite series is becoming woke, just call them a tourist.
Thank you.